Good evening, my friends. Tonight, I invite you to sit back, dim the lights, and follow me down a lonely highway in the American Midwest. There's a story I want to share with you. A story about hunger, silence, and the kind of place you should never, ever step into if you see it glowing in the middle of nowhere. This, my friends, is the tale of the Midnight Diner. The road. The night was cold and starless when Matthew Clark realized he had been driving for hours without seeing another car. His phone had lost signal 2 states ago, and the fuel gauge was dipping toward empty. He was heading west, chasing the kind of freedom you tell yourself you'll find somewhere past the horizon. But freedom, like the highway, had begun to feel endless. That's when he saw it. A neon sign flickering red and blue pierced the darkness. Eat, open 24 hours. It looked almost like a mirage. A small diner sat at the edge of the road, bathed in pale yellow light. Relief washed over him. Coffee, food, maybe even directions. That was all he needed. He pulled in. The diner. The parking lot was empty, not a single car. Yet inside the booths were full. Through the glass, Matthew saw people sitting at every table. No one moved. No one spoke. They just stared at their plates, motionless. A shiver crawled up his spine, but exhaustion won over unease. He pushed open the door. The bell above it chimed, a brittle, metallic sound that seemed too loud in the heavy silence. "Take a seat anywhere you like," a voice called. Matthew turned. Behind the counter stood a woman in a pale blue uniform. Her smile was wide, too wide, and her eyes never quite met his. He slid into the nearest booth. The vinyl seat stuck to his jacket, as though the air itself was damp. The menu was already on the table, though the pages were blank, except for one phrase typed in faded letters. "A special of the night." The waitress approached, pad in hand, though she hadn't written a single word. "What'll it be, honey?" she asked. Matthew cleared his throat. Coffee, and maybe a burger." She nodded, but her pen didn't move. Instead, she leaned in close enough that he could smell the faint scent of iron on her breath. "Good choice," she whispered. "Everyone orders the special eventually." He frowned. "What's the special?" The waitress just smiled. When she walked away, Matthew glanced around again. The other patrons hadn't stirred. Their plates were piled high with something dark, something wet. None of them were eating, and yet their chests rose and fell. They were breathing, waiting. Minutes dragged on. The silence pressed in. Then the waitress returned with a steaming plate. It wasn't a burger. Something unrecognizable sat between the bread, slick, glistening, almost pulsing as though it were alive. Matthew pushed back. "This isn't what I ordered." The waitress tilted her head. "It's what you need." The other patrons turned in unison, their eyes locking on him for the first time. Dozens of pale, unblinking faces. Matthew's pulse raced. "You know what? Forget it. I'm not hungry." He stood, but the floor beneath him felt sticky, holding his shoes like glue. The waitress set the plate down in front of him. "Eat," she said softly, "or you'll starve here forever." Panic surged through him. He tore his feet free, stumbling toward the door. The bell above it chimed again, but when he shoved the door open, there was no night outside, only more diner, rows and rows of booths stretching endlessly, each one filled with silent patrons, each one lit by the same flickering neon glow. The waitress was suddenly beside him, though he hadn't seen her move. "I've nowhere to run, sweetheart. Roads only lead here after midnight." He backed away. "This is insane. I don't belong here." Her smile never faltered. "You sat down. You ordered. You belong." The realization. Matthew looked around wildly, and then he saw something that froze him. At the far booth, near the corner, a figure sat slumped, wearing the same jacket he wore, the same messy hair, the same tired eyes. It was him. The double lifted its head slowly, mechanically, and stared at him with hollow, sunken eyes. The waitress touched his shoulder. Her hand was ice cold. "Don't fight it," she whispered. "Everyone takes a seat eventually. Everyone becomes part of the diner." Matthew opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came. His body was no longer his own. The world dimmed. When his vision cleared, he was sitting at the booth again. A plate before him, a fork in his hand, and across the room the bell above the door chimed. A new traveler stepped inside, weary from the road. grateful to see the neon glow of an open diner. The waitress turned, smiling that same wide smile. "Take a seat anywhere you like," she called. And Matthew, or what was left of him, sat frozen in silence, waiting. So, my friends, if you ever find yourself driving a lonely highway past midnight, and you see a diner glowing where no diner should be, keep driving, because once you sit down, you may never leave. Good night.